Okay, so a number of people as I was going around were kind of like, well, the urination thing isn't really, where I don't know what to do with it, but it's something there that's bothering us. So one of the things you might think about is, even if that's not your main thing, saying, gee, maybe we ought to put her on some sort of a time schedule or something where we give her some breaks, give her a chance to do it, and at least begin to think about reinforcing. Because even if it's just a matter of incontinence, can I begin to have more self-care situations? Because obviously this is an issue that at this age is going to start being a problem for her, isn't it, in terms of her peer groups, if nothing else. All right?
Check in, check out, but twice a day, maybe midday and end of the day, so she gets more access to positive adult attention.
Okay, so check in, check out, but maybe looking at it twice a day instead of just once, so that she's getting peer positive teacher intervention at least twice a day.
Social skills training, hand-pick a peer partner.
Okay, social skills training and hand-picking a peer partner. What would the peer partner do?
Well, if it's a matter of what page they're on, if she didn't hear it, if it's somebody who can sit next to her and just go, we're on page 12, you know, kind of a thing. To not call attention to her that she's not sure, but it could also be part of the hearing impairment. We don't know.
So that peer could serve as a model, both, and also if there's a problem that she didn't hear something, could help model what she's supposed to be doing, let her know you're supposed to be on page 12, whatever's going on, and she doesn't have to stand out in front of everybody.
And then the last thing we talked about was in-servicing both the general ed teachers and the classrooms about hearing impairment, about how to function in a group like that. Okay, and then
like an in-service with the kids and the teachers around how to deal with a child with a hearing impairment, kind of going on some of the things Tracy was talking about. All right, other issues people came up with. Yes?
One thing we talked about, teachers that transitioned to a new activity, we didn't know if that was novel or new. So what I had is sometimes we can do pre-teach so they're not embarrassed in the situation. So you kind of work with them ahead so they're kind of ahead when they get into that group. Also, what I call prepare and behavioral momentum, if they're looking at a transition, prepare them for the transition and behavioral momentum instead of doing something that a high probability of success. Going into that, something that has maintenance that are very successful at before working on more challenging.
Okay, so looking at that whole transition issue, and one factor might be in terms of looking at having one, kind of prepare her for the transition. We're going to transition now, so she knows this is going to happen, and then having an activity that she can enter into that she can be successful. So she starts off being successful, able to get into it. And the first part of that was I missed.
Prepare, the first one.
Yeah.
Pre-teach.
Oh yeah, pre-teaching. Okay. And we talked about, a couple of other people were talking about this, but for a lot of kids, especially if I've got an issue where I'm feeling less than competent, oftentimes if you bring them in early pre-teach, and you can do this with a number of kids. Oftentimes I will bury kids in small groups with other kids. And so while I'm doing this for Kari here, I'm going to bring Jill and Damien and a couple of them, Maureen, we're all going to come in and we're going to pre-teach this because I want you guys to help me teach the rest of the kids. Now, the reality is, it's nice that you can kind of peer tutor and all this. I'm really doing it to give you some pre-teaching. But it gives you a chance to do some, so you can begin to do some of these things and protect their dignity and a number of other aspects in terms of what's going on. Okay? Other issues or comments people came up with? We exhausted it all, huh? Okay. How about her peer issue? How about this? Oh, we got something over here?
Well, I think we were a little bit more concerned that at this point we felt that the academics weren't as important as the emotional issues. So what we were thinking about doing was pulling her back out of her classes except for the language and reading, because that's where she seemed to have the most success, and keep her in the resource group more time, because it would probably be more structured, and then have her work her way out so that, you know, give her more academic success a little bit at a time.
Okay, and so the issue would be is perhaps that a number of groups came up with this. Is this the least restrictive environment for this child? And you know, we always have issues with that with any child, and I think when you've got a child with hearing impairment, it becomes even that much more complex to decide what constitutes a least restrictive environment. But the idea that maybe pulling her back into the resource room or pulling her back someplace else where she can get more intensive work around some of the areas might be something to think about in terms of this particular child. Okay, that she might in fact be more isolated out there in the inclusive classroom.
We also thought that, well, for sure we would make a referral to ISRC, because we don't know what's going on at home. The mom's only 26. She's, you know, urinating at home too. Is it a medical problem? Has there been sexual abuse? I mean, I think there's a lot of other information we would need to
All right, so a referral to the Illinois Resource Center. I mean, and I think a number of issues. I mean, obviously there's some family pieces to this, right? And it seems to be falling apart between the school and the family. And so this is probably a family that would benefit from some sort of issue in terms of helping bridge some of those issues, helping to collaborate more around what's going on. And how do we communicate to the parents? How do we communicate to the teachers? There are times I'll sit in meetings and I'll listen to how educators talk to the parents about their kids. And I want to say, can you hear yourself? I was in one time where the mother said, well, my son says such and such happens. And we've all heard that, right? Where the kid's going home and telling stories about what happened. And the principal looks at the mother and says, well, does your kid lie? And I kind of just said, hell, why didn't you just stand up and slap her? You know, I mean, if you want to get her set off, you couldn't have done it any better than this. Now, again, the principal's not a bad person, but we get into this stuff, and I don't think we hear ourselves. And obviously things have fallen apart here.
Well, we dropped at a certain point. There were three things that jumped out to us regarding staff. First is the regular ed teacher, and that's been addressed a number of times about not wearing the FM system. I mean, that's not that hard. You put it on and you turn it on.
Okay, so the teacher for the FM system.
There was the nurse that said the thing at the meeting about this medication can, a side effect is bipolar. I mean, what's that? Where is that coming from? That's like what you're saying about the line. And the third piece is where this student has the support piece to go see the social worker, and other people are saying she's using it to manipulate the situation. And we do this in our program, and that's rarely the case. If they have that's their safety place. Let her go. So my point being, I think that we need to have better staff communication.
Okay. Yeah. So there's some communication issues. The whole idea that the student, the nurse, in terms of that, telling the parents, oh, well, that medication will lead to, or has led to the development of bipolar disorder. Obviously, how do you say that? What's going on? And is it true? But the other issue is that whole idea that the social worker and the child was using the social worker to escape, and then so staff and you get that kind of infighting and territorial kind of stuff. But obviously, this is a child who probably needs a place to be able to go that's safe. How do you begin to set those kinds of things up? But again, how do you open those channels of communication? How do you to begin to talk to people about what's going on? Because if I'm the teacher and I truly believe that Amy's doing this to run away from what's going on, we got to talk about that. What's happening? All right. Other issues? Yeah.
Also, if she's ADHD and she's shouting out answers, at least she's answering, but you could remind her. You could say, yes, that's a great answer. I really like that. Give her some positive verbal responses from the teacher, acknowledge it, remind her about, you have to raise your hand, but still give her more positive than negative than if she does have the ADHD. So how do you deal with that in class? How do teachers with that?
So how do you deal with the whole ADHD and the impulse control, and give her reinforcement for the fact that she's getting the right answer, at least she's participating, but at the same time she's kind of stealing the thunder from others. So those are tough issues, because one of the problems is that if I do the reinforcement of her, what am I going to see? More behavior. I mean, just if reinforcement in fact works, it's going to increase the future probability of the behavior. I don't want her doing this. But at the same time, I don't want to discourage her involvement. So it becomes one of those things of like, what could I do? How can I encourage participation but not stealing the thunder from everybody else? And that might require my thinking about how can I get all students to respond? How could we do some kind of either choral kind of thing or some other way? I know. Tracy? Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say maybe, for some of the time that you're teaching and you want, because all kids like to shout out the answer. Say, okay, now this is going to be the shout out the answer, game. So if, you know the answer, the first one to shout it out, gets a star or whatever it is. And then you give her an opportunity, not just her, but others too, to shout it out. And then go back to, now we're back to the rule, we're not going to shout it out this time. And do that a couple of times, and maybe that'll... Yeah, you could have a thing where kids... The other thing that is oftentimes very effective, although you kind of take it from direct instruction, where you've got a signal. And nobody can respond until I put my finger down. And I do it pretty quickly to begin with, but then I want a choral response. But all of a sudden, it's a visual thing that helps some of these kids realize,
I've got to keep quiet until the finger goes down. So I give them a couple of seconds to actually think about that and build that delay in, because I've got a visual prompt. You know, and then as time goes on, you know, to just help them be able to have just a little bit more wait time in terms of what's going on can be something that you're doing. Whiteboards. Somebody mentioned whiteboards. I'm a firm believer in begging. I think every school needs somebody like Jamie Foxx and MASH. They could get stuff, you know, always could get. I'm a big one for going, like I'd go to Home Depot and say, okay, I'm teaching a class. You've got those big sheets 4x8 of that white shower, laminated shower stuff. Can you cut that up into 12 by 12 inch square, one sheet of that 12 by 12 for me, just and give it to me? And I've never had Home Depot say no to me. You know, they just write it off, and all of a sudden now I've got a bunch of whiteboards, and I can say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask a question. Everybody write your answer. Then we're going to put them up. All right, so it gives everybody a chance to write what's going on. I can actually check and see what everybody's doing. Okay. All right, other comments? Yes?
I do a game kind of like that where we have the kids, I'm at the high school, so they make their own flashcards anyway for vocabulary. And on the couple days before reviews, they just lay them on their desk, and all they have to do, I can see everybody's, they put up the word side.
Okay.
As their, you know, I do a fill in the blank type thing.
All right, so they develop their own flashcards. The kids develop their own, and then so that if I'm asking questions, they can put up the word that goes, the vocabulary word that they've written on their flashcard that goes with that.
Other new clickers like they use in college if you've got the funds. I know a couple of our classrooms have those, not in our deaf program, but within the high school.
All right.
Pretty fun. Everyone likes to see their number get up there.
Yeah, how many, A, B, and C, or whatever it is, like on the game shows where you press the button. I don't know if I've seen that in some, a couple big high schools. All right. Other key issues. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to walk over here. I want you to get in your groups again. I'm going to give each group a big sheet of paper. And as a large group together, we're going to do some labeling. How many of you have seen the blueprints? I know I've talked about it before. It's through the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. We sat down and we said, okay, if a kid is engaging in failure to complete work, if they're doing it for adult attention, what should you do proactively? What should you do reactively? And we put this material together, and basically it's if you print the whole thing out, it's 69 pages because it's got all the ramifications of if you say you're going to do this, what does that mean? What does that intervention look like? I want to have in this group, you guys are all experts in terms of working with kids who have hearing impairments and the kinds of issues that come to bear with them. I want us to kind of think about that population and say, okay, if we say kids engage in inappropriate behavior or have problem behavior to gain or to escape and avoid, then I want us to think about what kinds of things are the kids you work with trying to gain? What are the things the kids you work with are trying to escape? And then down this row, we're going to put a series of behaviors. What are the common behaviors that they might be using to get these things to do these things? Then in your small groups, I'm going to have you think about filling this in as best you can to say, okay, if a student is doing something to gain adult attention, and what they're doing is they're engaging in swearing, what could you do proactively? What could you do reactively as part of an intervention plan for a student like that? So we're going to do kind of an idea grid. That make sense? Does that sound like something worth doing? All right, so get in your groups. So I'll know how to pass these out. Sure. Attention. What else are they trying to gain? Peer attention. All right, so the next one, put peer attention. All right, peer attention, peer affiliation. What else might they be trying to gain? Control. Okay? No, you're going across the top. Okay, across the top right now. All right, so one thing I might want to gain is some power or control. Again, we've got kids who come, they control their family, they control everything. They come to school if they have permission to pee. So they have this sense of, I need to be able to control something, or they have no control. All right, that's a tough one. That's one schools have a hard time with, and some people don't even ever want to deal with. Okay, what else might kids be trying to gain? All right, some sort of tangible item. Okay.
What about clarification? What methods are trying to gain that? They don't exactly do it appropriately, but they're trying to gain some clarification.
Okay, so, okay, how would we say that? So they're trying to gain some sort of understanding or some sort of well, understanding clarification. We can put that down. So a lot of that behavior will be communicative intent, right? I don't understand what's going on. Okay? All right, anything else we see the kids are trying to gain? I know you've already filled all your boxes, but that's all right. Anything else we see kids trying to gain?
What about like sensory?
All right, yeah, there's some sensory payoff in terms of some behaviors, right? In terms of there's just the kind of the internalized kind of issues. It may be even, for example, some kids, like I work with a lot of kids who are visually impaired, and if they're blind, they'll push on their eyes, because what happens when you push on your eye? You see color, and I mean they'll literally push their eye into their brain in terms of trying to get this. All right, but it's a payoff. Okay. All right. How about to escape? What are things the kids are trying to escape? Work. Okay, the actual task demand work. Okay. What else might they be trying to escape? Okay. By virtue of what? What is it about that teacher or that class that's making them want to escape?
Maybe discipline.
Okay. So I might want to escape punishment or consequences. Okay.
Or being challenged.
All right. Is that kind of the task?
No, I mean more like academically. It's more of a...
Embarrassment, maybe? Not preferred activity.
Okay, somebody said embarrassment. Do we sometimes want to escape social situations?
Yeah.
All right, so there's some kind of a social situation or activity that's a social aspect. It's the peer involvement, something about what's going on with this group that I don't want to be part of. Okay? We'll see that a lot sometimes where our kids don't want to be in special ed programs. Because I don't want to be with all these other kids. I'm working with a child right now with Down syndrome who does fantastic as long as he's not with another kid with Down syndrome. Okay. Anything else we're trying to escape? All right, that's enough to get going with. All right, now we'll go down the side. Over on your far left-hand side, you got a bunch of white spots there. What are some of the behaviors that we see our kids working that we're fighting with all the time? Swearing.
Refusal to work.
All right, physical aggression, kind of pushing, shoving, kicking.
Tantrums, like crying.
Okay, tantruming.
Ignoring.
All right, ignoring, non-compliance.
Does that include refusal? Sort of.
We have refusal, non-compliance. You've also got, I mean, I know some people are saying, like, you've also got kids who are defiant, and so it's not non-compliance, it's disrespect and defiance.
Destruction.
Destruction of property. Anything else?
Running.
Okay. Leaving the instructional area. Okay. All right, that's probably a good list. Okay, now, what you've got, you see you've got your lines there. So you take swearing, and you can start wherever you want to on this, because we'll talk through what's going on. Grab a behavior. Now, if they're doing this, if your first one is adult attention, if they're doing swearing for adult attention, what could we do proactively to begin to think about dealing with that behavior? What can we do reactively to deal with that behavior? What kinds of interventions, plans, ideas, strategies could you use that a teacher could do? So all of a sudden, I'm swearing, because if I say, this is a bunch of shit, I'm not doing this math. All right? I can all of a sudden get you to pay attention to me. What could you do instead? What could you do to make this think as many as you can. Let's try to make this as rich of an opportunity to think about what would fit for adult attention, for swearing kind of a thing. Does that make sense what I'm asking you to do? And just fill in these boxes. All right? Do as much as you can. Work as a group, and then we'll share some of this, talk a little bit about it, and then we'll go on to the next thing. You're saying, for example, swearing peers. Some people I've looked and you said ignoring. I want you to tell me how you're going to get a group of middle school age kids to ignore swearing. All right? You tell me how you're going to do that. I don't know. All right. Again, if you're putting down, for example, I watched a couple of your sheets. If you're saying swearing, peer attention, you're going to say ignoring. Is it going to be effective if all I do is I want you guys to ignore it when she says this? Is that going to work? Probably not. So what could you do that would increase the probability that kids will ignore that swearing? Okay. Now I'll give you a hint. Remember the stars, differential reinforcement? If all of a sudden I've got a kid swearing and that's going to lose a star, are the other kids going to laugh and support that behavior? Not so much. All right, so a group contingency could be a real powerful way to pull peer attention away from a behavior. All right, so think very specifically that if you were going to help a teacher develop a plan, what would that look like? Everybody come back as a large group. We'll start with you guys. Why don't you pick one behavior and one function that you're particularly proud of and talk to us about what you came up with. All right, so what behavior and what function?
It was swearing to escape.
All right, so we're looking at swearing to escape.
So we decided that instead of letting them actually physically escape, that we would give them a replacement word for the word that they want to use that only the student and the teacher knows. So that way if they're feeling that they need to express themselves in a social situation, if they're upset, that they can use that replacement word.
Okay.
A socially appropriate word that the other kids would not really know, but only the teacher would know.
All right, so you're going to give them some kind of a code to allow them to escape. So there's going to, instead of having to swear to get you to want to stop that you send them out, that you're going to give them some other system to say, I need to get out of here right now. All right? So it could be a word, it could be, I know I had teachers that used to say, if you pushed a book up to the upper corner of the desk, that'll let me know there's a problem, I'll get to you as quickly as possible, or whatever the situation might be. So you've got some other situation, all right? And you would do that proactively. How about reactively? Do you think any idea that's what you do with the kid swears for escape reactively?
Well, we have lots of ideas all the way across, actually, but not necessarily for social situations.
Okay. How about anybody else? For social situation, I'm swearing, I want to escape a social situation. Any ideas? What could you teach a kid? What could you deal with?
For proactive or reactive?
Reactive. I'll throw some proactive ideas out too, that's fine.
For our proactive, we had discussed the social situation ahead of time, so like who would be there, what would be happening, where it would be, and why it was important to be there. We were taking the perspective of maybe it's kind of a social anxiety. They were really nervous about going to the assembly, or they had a small group speech lesson and their voice was different than the other kids, so kind of preparing them for it ahead of time.
All right, good.
Determining an out strategy, so if they were willing to try to put themselves in that socially anxious situation, that they had like a card or a word or something that they could actually need to go get water back to the classroom. Maybe partnering them up with a buddy so that they didn't feel like they had to go at it alone, they could go with somebody else. And then reactive, if they did try all those other things and they still found themselves overwhelmed to the point of needing to leave, that if we had to remove them back to the classroom, that there would be some coping skill instruction that they would receive back at the classroom or with the social worker, and then a post-removal processing, like last seminar with Laura, the behavior doctor was here and they had the CSI, so what was the situation, what could I do better next time, kind of working through that with them.
Okay, all right. Anybody else? All right, okay. How about you guys? What did you have for a square that you're particularly proud of? Or if not proud of, one you can read. I don't know.
Well, for physical aggression, if it's under adult attention, proactive, we thought, as the teacher, that you need to be aware of, any escalation, any maybe physical indications that the student was becoming agitated.
Okay, so for physical aggression, one is just to be aware of the student, to see if there's any, and a lot of kids will give tells. You can tell there's an issue coming, okay?
And another is the use of physical, just proximity. If they want adult attention, maybe just being around even as you're teaching would help them in finding opportunities to call on the child and put them in where they would be responding if you could further acknowledge them. Reactive, after something happens, of course there's always that seek to safety, but the biggest thing is just to remain calm. Try to calm both the student and others around there. I mean, that was the biggest thing, and just to not overreact.
Okay.
Their physical, it's that importance of keeping yourself really calm.
Okay. Is that easy to do? Yeah, I think one of the big things that you have that you come into, and one of the problems with behavior is that behavior triggers emotion in us. Physical aggression triggers probably the most behaviors. Next, and swearing's probably in there too. But and the issue becomes, how do I keep staff to be incredibly businesslike in their response? I can't ignore it. It's not ethically possible for me to ignore somebody who's becoming aggressive. So I have to pay attention to it. But now, how do I do that in a manner that allows me to minimize my attention to it? Okay, like I was saying, I don't talk to my glasses when I put them in my pocket. I just put them there. So the kid becomes almost object-like in some of those situations. And I'm ready to turn on the emotion as soon as they start doing the right thing. But when they're doing the wrong thing, and I usually say this, like, if you think about, if you've gotten in a fight with your husband or wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, a good fight's not bad every now and then, right? Kind of a little energy flowing, right? It's even better they go, oh honey, I was so stupid, I was so wrong, it's all my fault, I'm sorry. That's great, right? How do you feel when they go, we're not even going to talk about this? That's kind of the approach you want when it's a situation where I want to turn the attention off. It's like, this doesn't even happen. Because that's very dissatisfying. All right? So, but it's hard to do. All right. Other people throw anything in there? Yeah.
Along those lines, we were also saying that sometimes you need to let both parties, want to listen to both sides of the story, and just by the person who was the person being aggressive, how that other person felt. Yes, it hurt or whatever, and they can say exactly how they felt when it happened. And sometimes they don't really care, so it doesn't matter, but sometimes it does. They don't realize that they're really hurting that person in more ways than physical.
Right.
And then kind of get both sides of the story, because sometimes it's the person that was being pushed that caused that. And then you give the attention to the person that was being pushed and say, you've got to stop bothering them. They can really hurt you, but and then when they see, wait a minute, I'm not the only one getting in trouble here, somebody's finally listening to me and kind of, getting, on the case of that other person, they realize, wait a second. And then you turn back and say, okay, now, you shouldn't be pushing them, but I understand why you might have felt that you needed to do that.
And if you think proactively, do you see situations in which where a kid goes against the staff member? First of all, that's a pretty rare behavior in most cases. All right? What kind of things might lead a kid to become aggressive against the staff member?
Mad at their parents.
Okay, could be. Mad at their parents. Oftentimes, the staff member kind of backs this kid into a situation where there's not a lot of options anymore. Okay? And so one of those proactive things is to teach what are some options and what are options I need to provide this kid in a situation that will allow him, I've seen staff try to block a door and they're holding, you're going to do it, and it's like, you've kind of left, the only thing the kid can do is go through you, So guess what he's going to do? He's going to go through you, all right? How do I think about that and begin to think about some of those things? All right, how about you guys? What squares did you come up with that you're happy about?
We did to escape doing work or a task. They showed non-compliance. So proactively we said to offer choices, but both choices would involve finishing the work
in some manner. So you can either do the worksheet with me or do the worksheet with
these wonderful worksheets.
Worksheet with the resource teacher. So you're still doing it, but you get a choice of who you want to finish it with. And then also offering incentives. So once you finish this worksheet, then you'll get to go play with the puzzle for 5 minutes or whatever it may be. And then reactively, I can't read my handwriting, positively reinforcing the students who are complying and who are doing the work. And then in some cases, just eventually ignoring the non-compliant behavior and almost removing yourself as a teacher from the situation to show that you're not going to give them extra attention for continuously saying, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it.
And that would be if they were looking for? Attention. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the, so part of the issue is choice. Now, choice is a real powerful one. In fact, it's been shown to be the number one. How many of you have problems with kids doing homework? Number one best intervention for increasing homework is you give kids choice. You can do this for homework or you can do this for homework. And it can't be you can do the even problems or the odd problems. It really has to be truly two different issues, right? You can show me you know the work by doing this. You can show me you know the work by doing that. Okay? Real powerful way to deal with that kind of a situation. You've got to be somewhat cautious because I think we do this a lot when you say I'm going to give an incentive. How many times do we see teachers go, if you do your math, you can go on the computer? Okay, how many of you think the kid isn't doing his math because of something to do with the computer? It has nothing, again, to do with the function. So we set these things kids like up and say, if you do that, you're good. But those really aren't the reasons the kid's not doing it. So again, think about what's keeping the kid from doing this work. You know, is it boring? Is it beyond me? Is it I don't understand why this is valuable to me? I go into classrooms and see students working like children with autism. We've got them doing stuff that there is no way in the world this kid has a clue why the hell I'm doing this. And then we wonder why they don't want to just keep doing it. You know, and it's like, you know, I think sometimes people have gotten, those of you that work with any children with autism, some of the teach exercises that we have them do, where you have these boxes of stuff and then they do things and they put the box over here and they take the next box. Some of those boxes are pretty inane. Look at the task and you're going, this has no meaning. And then I've seen schools that actually say, once the kid assembles something, have the kid disassemble it. It's like, well, you've just told the kid whatever he did is very valuable because he's taking it apart now, okay? So don't expect him to be excited about doing it tomorrow. He's, you know, he knows this is not a particularly meaningful activity. So think about the kind of tasks that you're having kids do. All right, how about you guys?
Okay. Okay, we did leaving instructional area to escape a social situation. Proactive is have an alternative place to go in the room. You've also talked about where you shorten the school day for the student if it's, you know, really bad. Have the door closed with a stop sign on it just to kind of make the student aware that, you know, if you are going through the door, you have a chance to stop here. Another one is social skills training. And reactive, that's where we kind of came up with, where we found out different districts have different security in the building. Like some have no security and things like that. So various resources. But somehow, once the student has left your room, somebody has to be aware that that student has left your room. And somehow, somebody has to intervene with that student.
And what do you do when you intervene with them?
Well, hopefully, somebody talks to them about why they did that, or I can see you're really upset, you know, what's going on, that sort of thing.
Okay. And again, it kind of goes to the thing you were saying, if I help the kids understand what am I getting into, could be a really powerful proactive situation. Those social situation ones are really tough because social skills and social situations trigger lots of messages. So I oftentimes think I'm working in my office and if somebody knocks on my door and I'm working, I'll say, come on in. Well, I'm giving double messages. My head's done, I'm writing, so the message there is, I'm busy, leave me the hell alone. But I've just said come in, and so that means come in. And so oftentimes socials give mixed messages, and it's really hard for kids to figure out what's going on. And so it's very easy for them to become overwhelmed. So helping them think about some of those things, what things they might experience, For example, Amy, that you're going to see kids laughing. It doesn't mean they're laughing at you. How do I begin to explore some of those things? All right. What'd you guys come up with?
With tantrums, proactive for adult attention would be to teach the rules and to teach you different options instead of, having a tantrum, and check in and check out, because something that might have happened at home that night before could, in fact, cause a problem when he thinks about it later on, and it could have nothing to do with a little thing could set him off, and it could be something related to home. So checking in the morning with the teacher and checking out, making sure he has everything that help. For reactive to tantrums, either ignoring the tantrum, which sometimes is kind of hard to do, or removal. You have to remove the kid, and to get peer attention who might be accelerating the tantrum, remove the whole class and have someone come in with that student into the classroom and take the other students out, removing most of the class from that situation. That way he doesn't get that peer attention.
Right. And this is becoming more and more of an issue. They're saying removing the rest of the students. So if a student's tantruming, removing the other students from the situation. This is becoming more of an issue with the attention on restraint and seclusion. Because oftentimes we're restraining kids because we need to move them. But the kid is not dangerous to self or others. He's just incredibly disruptive right here. So he's in the middle of our hallway, swearing, screaming, doing all this kind of stuff. Is that dangerous to self or others? Do I have the right to restrain him? Do I have the right to put him into seclusion? I really don't. Okay? And if I do, I'm doing so at my own peril. So I have to be, and this is becoming an issue for schools to realize I may have to have very clear ways to remove the rest of the class, to shut down a hallway and say, we're not going through this way right now. We've got a crisis experience. And do we have things in place? So people know how to react when that happens. Because we do that, and then we end up in big trouble. Kids get hurt, whatever's going on, and the kid was moved when he wasn't dangerous to self or others. Now you've got an issue. So do we have a place in the learning center? Do we have a place that we can go and take the rest of the class? Do we know how we're going to move them? Have we practiced those kind of situations?
How do you make a choice between restraint and, just letting them throw things?
Well, part of the issue, again, first of all, is he dangerous to self or others? If he's not dangerous to self or others, quite frankly, you should not be using restraint, period. Period. Now, that's easy to say, not easy to do. I'll be real honest with you. I know that. Because I've got a kid who's tearing stuff up in my classroom. It's not dangerous, but he's not, I don't like that he's tearing up the work that took me 3 months to put together in terms of what's going on, okay? But that becomes, that's an issue.
If he's throwing stuff,
but just because I'm throwing doesn't mean I'm dangerous to self or others. There have been some real, if I'm throwing stuff, but it's not at people and it's not, you can't go, well, but if that had been a rock, and if it had been going 30 miles an hour and in that direction, it could have hurt somebody. It's like, was he throwing rocks? No. He was throwing a book. Where was he throwing it? He was throwing it down. That's not dangerous to self or others. So they're being, and this is, we're in a funny place right now with a lot of that. It's really, really, really likely. It was brought in both the Senate and the House last year, policies, laws to try to put more very strong contingencies in terms of restraint, and neither one of them went anywhere. They will probably be reintroduced this year. And the two things you never want to see made are laws and sausage, because they don't know what the hell they're doing when they do it, and they oftentimes pass laws that we have to then live with. But we haven't policed ourselves well, and most kids who have gotten hurt have been over inane stuff.
You're saying right now the law is that if they're in danger of hurting themselves or others, they can be restrained.
Yes.
Because CPS is now telling us, but I'm pretty sure it's because they don't have any money and they won't send us for CPI training anymore. They won't pay for it. But now when you were talking about this, I just a kid in particular